You clicked on this video for a reason, and I want to start by telling you were right because what we're going to talk about today is something that most people living with diabetes, or even just elevated blood sugar, have never been told clearly, directly, or completely. We're talking about the 3 vitamins that have some of the most compelling clinical evidence behind them when it comes to improving how your body manages glucose. Not supplements pulled out of thin air, not wellness trends, 3 specific micronutrients that your body genuinely needs to run its insulin machinery at full capacity, and that, in a large percentage of people over the age of 50, are quietly missing. If you're over 60 and you've been managing blood sugar for years, taking your medications, watching what you eat, checking your numbers, and things still aren't where you want them to be, there's a real possibility that your body is fighting with one hand tied behind its back. Because here's something the standard diabetes appointment rarely covers. Up to 80% of people with type 2 diabetes over the age of 50 have at least one significant micronutrient deficiency, not a slight dip, a clinically meaningful shortfall that can make insulin less effective, worsen inflammation, and quietly push your A1C in the wrong direction, no matter how disciplined you've been. And here's the part I want you to hold on to until the end of this video, the part that might genuinely surprise you. 2 of the 3 nutrients we're going to discuss today are ones your doctor almost certainly checks for other reasons. They're not exotic, they're not obscure, but the connection between their levels and your blood sugar control is something most people in the exam room never hear about. By the time this video is done, you'll understand not just what to take, but why. At a biological level, these specific deficiencies sabotage your glucose metabolism in ways that no medication alone can fully compensate for. I've spent considerable time reviewing peer-reviewed literature on micronutrient status and glycemic control, synthesizing data from dozens of randomized controlled trials and large-scale observational studies to bring you what the evidence actually supports, not what sounds good, not what sells supplements, but what the science, done carefully and honestly, points toward. Before we dive in, if you're finding this useful, take 2 seconds right now, hit that subscribe button so you never miss a video, and give this a thumbs up. It genuinely helps more people like you find this content. And drop a comment below, tell me what country you're watching from. I'd love to know where our community is tuning in from, around the world. Hold on a second. Before we go any further, I've put something together for you. It's called the Glucose Paradox. It's a free guide on blood sugar and diabetes, and you can grab it for free through the link in the description. I'm telling you this now because I want you to finish this video with a concrete tool in your hands. To get it right away, just click the link in the description, head over to my site, and drop your email. You'll receive the guide in your inbox a few minutes later. But I don't want to take up any more of your time. Let's get back to the video. Let's start with the foundation. To understand why these 3 vitamins matter so profoundly for blood sugar, you first need to understand something about how glucose metabolism actually works in the body, and specifically how it changes as we age and as insulin resistance develops over time. When you eat a meal that contains carbohydrates, your digestive system breaks those carbohydrates down into glucose, which enters your bloodstream. Your pancreas, sensing the rise in blood sugar, releases insulin, a hormone that functions essentially as a key. Insulin travels to your cells and binds to specialized receptors on their surface. When those receptors are working correctly, they allow glucose to pass through the cell membrane, where it's either burned for energy or stored. This is a beautifully coordinated process, and under ideal conditions, it keeps your blood sugar within a narrow, healthy range. But here's what happens in type 2 diabetes, and in the earlier stages of insulin resistance that often precede it by a decade or more. The cells become less responsive to insulin's signal. The locks change. Insulin arrives, but the doors don't open properly. Your pancreas compensates by producing more insulin. Blood sugar remains elevated anyway. And over time, the constant exposure to high glucose levels generates something called oxidative stress, essentially, a form of cellular damage caused by unstable molecules called free radicals. That oxidative stress further degrades the insulin receptor function, inflames blood vessel walls, damages the kidneys and the nerves, and creates a self-reinforcing cycle that is genuinely difficult to interrupt with medication alone. Now, three of the most important regulators of this entire system, insulin receptor function, oxidative stress control, and cellular glucose uptake, depend critically on micronutrients that are chronically depleted in people with diabetes, and the depletion itself, in many cases, is partly caused by the disease. This is what makes it such an insidious trap. Let's break each one down. The first nutrient, and in terms of systemic reach, perhaps the most consequential of the three, is vitamin D3. Most people know vitamin D as the sunshine vitamin associated with bone health, and that's accurate. But what most people don't realize is that vitamin D3 doesn't function like most vitamins at all. Once it's converted in the liver and kidneys into its active form, calcitriol, it behaves like a steroid hormone. It circulates through the bloodstream, enters cells, and directly regulates gene expression, meaning it physically turns genes on and off. The number of genes that vitamin D3 influences is remarkable. Current research puts it at over 1,000, and within that gene network, there are several that are directly involved in glucose transport and insulin signaling. One of the most important is the gene that codes for GLUT4, the glucose transporter protein that physically moves sugar molecules into muscle and fat cells in response to insulin. When vitamin D levels are adequate, GLUT4 expression is supported. When vitamin D is deficient, GLUT4 activity can fall, meaning your muscle cells become less capable of absorbing glucose from the bloodstream, even when insulin is present. But vitamin D's role doesn't stop at the muscle cell. It also has direct effects on the pancreatic beta cells, the cells responsible for producing insulin in the first place. Vitamin D receptors are found on beta cells, and research suggests that adequate D3 levels support the health and survival of these cells, helping to preserve insulin secretion capacity over time. This is particularly significant for older adults, in whom both beta cell function and vitamin D synthesis tend to decline simultaneously. Now let's talk about what the numbers actually show in clinical practice. A meta-analysis of randomized controlled trials found that vitamin D3 supplementation was associated with a reduction in hemoglobin A1c, the 3-month average of blood sugar levels, of approximately 0.32 percentage points. That may sound modest in isolation, but in the context of blood sugar management, where fractions of a point carry significant cardiovascular and renal implications, that's a clinically meaningful shift. Additionally, multiple studies have shown reductions in fasting blood glucose of between 15 and 25 milligrams per deciliter in individuals with deficient baseline levels who were brought up to sufficiency. The target range that the evidence most consistently points to is a serum 25-hydroxyvitamin D level between 30 and 50 nanograms per milliliter. Below 30, the metabolic effects of deficiency become increasingly measurable. The challenge is that in adults over 60, sun exposure is often reduced, kidney conversion efficiency declines, and the skin itself becomes less efficient at synthesizing D3 from ultraviolet light. Deficiency in this age group is not an edge case, it is statistically the norm. One practical detail that matters enormously here: vitamin D3 is a fat-soluble vitamin. Taking it with a fat-containing meal, even something as simple as a small handful of nuts or a piece of avocado, has been shown to improve absorption by approximately 30% compared to taking it on an empty stomach or with a fat-free meal. This is not a minor footnote. It's the difference between a supplement that works and one that largely passes through you. The systemic reach of this deficiency extends well beyond glucose. Low vitamin D3 is independently associated with increased risk of cardiovascular disease, deeply relevant for diabetics who already carry elevated cardiac risk. It's connected to impaired immune function, higher rates of depression and cognitive decline, and reduced muscle strength and coordination, all of which matter profoundly for quality of life in older adults. Correcting a vitamin D deficiency, in other words, is rarely a single system intervention. It touches nearly every aspect of health simultaneously. The second nutrient on our list is one that doesn't get nearly the attention it deserves in conventional diabetes care: vitamin E, but specifically the natural, mixed tocopherol and tocotrienol form, not the synthetic version that still appears in many mass-market multivitamins. To understand why vitamin E matters so much for blood sugar, you need to understand the nature of oxidative stress in diabetes. When glucose levels in the bloodstream are chronically elevated, the excess sugar reacts with proteins in a process called glycation. This is actually what hemoglobin A1C measures. It's a marker of how much your hemoglobin has been glycated by sugar. But beyond that well-known process, high blood glucose dramatically accelerates the production of reactive oxygen species, the free radicals we mentioned earlier. These molecules attack cell membranes, oxidize LDL cholesterol, making it far more damaging to blood vessel walls, and directly impair the function of the insulin receptor complex. Essentially, the same high glucose that you're trying to control is simultaneously producing the chemical damage that makes it harder to control going forward. This is precisely where vitamin E steps in. As one of the body's most potent fat-soluble antioxidants, vitamin E is embedded directly in cell membranes, where it intercepts and neutralizes free radicals before they can cause structural damage. But here's the critical distinction. The natural form of vitamin E contains 8 distinct molecular variants, 4 tocopherols, alpha, beta, gamma, and delta, and 4 tocotrienols. Each has a different biological activity. Gamma tocopherol, for instance, is particularly effective at neutralizing the nitrogen-based free radicals that are especially elevated in inflammatory conditions like diabetes. Tocotrienols have demonstrated the ability to reduce inflammatory cytokines and improve endothelial function, the health of the cells lining blood vessels. Synthetic vitamin E, the DL-alpha tocopherol form, provides only one of these 8 variants, and research increasingly suggests that taking synthetic alpha tocopherol alone, particularly at high doses, may actually displace the other tocopherols from tissue, potentially reducing overall protection. This is why the form matters, not just the dose. Clinical research on natural mixed-form vitamin E in diabetes shows improvements in a specific mechanism called insulin-stimulated glucose disposal. Essentially, how efficiently your cells take up glucose when insulin gives the signal. A daily dose of approximately 200 milligrams of natural mixed vitamin E has been associated in multiple trials with improved glycemic predictability, meaning fewer unexpected spikes and more stable readings across the day. There's an important caution here that I want to be explicit about, because it's medically significant, because natural mixed vitamin E can improve cellular glucose uptake and reduce insulin resistance. People who are already taking glucose-lowering medications, metformin, sulfonylureas, insulin, need to monitor their blood sugar more attentively when introducing this supplement. The combination of better insulin sensitivity and an existing medication that lowers blood sugar can, in some individuals, move levels lower than intended. This is a conversation to have directly with your physician, and it's why blood sugar monitoring throughout any supplement protocol is not optional, it's essential. The broader systemic connections of vitamin E deficiency in diabetes are significant. The same oxidative stress that impairs insulin signaling also contributes to diabetic neuropathy, the nerve damage that causes tingling, numbness, and pain in the feet and hands. It contributes to retinopathy, the progressive damage to the blood vessels of the retina, and it accelerates atherosclerosis, the arterial plaque buildup that drives heart attack and stroke risk. Vitamin E's role as a membrane-level antioxidant puts it at the intersection of all of these downstream complications. Addressing this deficiency isn't just about blood sugar, it's about protecting the vascular and neurological systems that high blood sugar slowly degrades over years. The third nutrient brings us to what might be the most direct and mechanistically clear connection between a micronutrient and insulin function: magnesium. Specifically, magnesium's role as what you might think of as the cellular gatekeeper for insulin's key. Here is the biology. Precisely. When insulin binds to its receptor on the surface of a cell, it triggers a cascade of intracellular signaling. One of the earliest and most critical steps in that cascade is the activation of an enzyme called tyrosine kinase, which phosphorylates chemically activates proteins that set off the downstream chain of events, leading to glucose uptake. Magnesium is a required cofactor for this enzyme. Without adequate intracellular magnesium, the tyrosine kinase step is impaired. Insulin arrives. It docks. It turns the key. But the ignition doesn't fire properly. the door stays partly closed. This is why researchers refer to magnesium as a cellular lubricant for insulin signaling. And it's why magnesium deficiency is so uniquely dangerous in the context of diabetes. The deficiency produces insulin resistance at the receptor level, making every molecule of insulin, whether produced by your pancreas or injected, less effective at doing its job. The tragedy of the depletion cycle in diabetes is that hyperglycemia, high blood sugar, directly drives urinary magnesium excretion. When blood glucose is elevated, the kidneys, working to filter the excess sugar, excrete more of several minerals in the process. Magnesium is among the most heavily affected, so the higher your blood sugar, the more magnesium you lose. The more magnesium you lose, the worse your insulin receptor function becomes. The worse your insulin receptor function becomes, the higher your blood sugar goes. It is a textbook self-perpetuating loop, and it operates quietly, without dramatic symptoms, over months and years. The symptoms of magnesium deficiency, when they do appear, are often attributed to other causes entirely. Nocturnal leg cramps, common in older diabetics, are a classic sign. Heart palpitations after meals, twitching of the eyelids, persistent fatigue that doesn't resolve with rest, difficulty sleeping even when tired, and heightened anxiety or irritability can all reflect suboptimal magnesium levels. These symptoms are so frequently normalized, particularly in older adults, that the underlying deficiency goes uninvestigated. Now, magnesium comes in many supplemental forms, and the differences are not trivial. Magnesium oxide, the most commonly sold form, has absorption rates that can be as low as 4%, meaning most of what you take doesn't reach your cells. Magnesium citrate and magnesium bisglycinate, also called glycinate, are substantially better absorbed, with bisglycinate being particularly well tolerated in people with sensitive digestive systems, because the magnesium is bound to the amino acid glycine, which smooths its transit through the gut. These are the forms that make the most clinical sense for people with diabetes who need reliable bioavailability. The systemic implications of magnesium extend well beyond the insulin receptor. Magnesium is a cofactor in over 300 enzymatic reactions in the human body. It is essential for ATP production, the fundamental energy currency of every cell. It regulates calcium channels in cardiac and skeletal muscle, which is why deficiency manifests as cramps and palpitations. It plays a critical role in the regulation of the nervous system, including neurotransmitter function and the body's physiological response to stress. It supports bone mineral density, profoundly relevant for older adults managing the dual risks of diabetes and osteoporosis. And it is deeply involved in sleep architecture. Low magnesium is consistently associated with disrupted, non-restorative sleep, which in turn raises cortisol levels, which in turn raises fasting blood glucose. The threads, once you start pulling on them, connect everything. So what does a rational, evidence-based approach to introducing these three nutrients actually look like in practice? The answer is gradual, systematic, and always conducted with medical oversight and active blood sugar monitoring. The first week is the starting point. Vitamin D3, taken with a fat-containing meal, establishes the hormonal foundation. Alongside it, introducing natural mixed-form vitamin E at a modest dose allows the body's antioxidant defenses to begin rebuilding without overwhelming anything. These two together address the oxidative environment and the gene regulatory framework simultaneously. The second week is when magnesium enters the picture. Starting at a lower dose and gradually increasing allows the digestive system to adapt and gives you the opportunity to observe any changes in blood sugar readings, energy levels, or sleep quality. This staggered approach also makes it clinically cleaner. If something changes noticeably in your readings, you'll have a clearer sense of which addition is responsible. The third week is for calibration. Based on how your body has responded, your fasting readings, your post-meal numbers, how you're sleeping, energy levels, any changes in symptoms like cramps or fatigue, doses can be adjusted upward or held steady. This is also when the feedback loop between supplements and medications becomes most important to monitor. If your blood sugar is moving meaningfully lower, your physician may need to reassess your medication doses to avoid overcorrection. The fourth week closes the loop with blood work, repeating a comprehensive metabolic panel, along with specific levels for 25-hydroxyvitamin D, serum magnesium, and red blood cell magnesium if available, gives you and your doctor objective data rather than impressions. This is how you determine whether levels are moving toward the therapeutic range and whether any further adjustments are warranted. This protocol is not a replacement for medication. It is not a guarantee. What it is a structured, biologically grounded attempt to address the micronutrient deficiencies that are measurably common in people with diabetes over 50. Deficiencies that, when corrected, allow the body's existing insulin machinery to work as effectively as it possibly can. Think of it not as adding something foreign to your system, but as removing an invisible obstruction that has been quietly limiting the results you're able to achieve with everything else you're already doing. The body is extraordinarily capable of self-regulation when it has what it needs. The frustration that so many people with diabetes experience, the sense that they're doing everything right and still not getting where they want to be, is often not a failure of effort, willpower. It's a failure of inputs. Give the system the nutrients it requires to function, and you change what the system is capable of producing. That's the core of what I wanted to share with you today. Not a magic solution. A mechanistic explanation, grounded in evidence, of why 3 specific nutrients matter so much for blood sugar, and a clear, practical starting point for addressing those gaps under medical guidance. And hey, if you made it all the way here, please subscribe to this channel if you haven't already. Hit the like button to let me know this was worth your time, and leave a comment below. Tell me what country you're watching from. Seriously, I read every single one, and it means a lot to see how far this community reaches. You know what the problem is with diabetes and high blood sugar? Most people find out way too late, and by the time they do, they have no idea where to even start. That's why I decided to create a free guide. It's called The Glucose Paradox, and inside, you'll find everything you wish you'd known sooner. I'll explain how blood sugar actually works, and why your body sometimes reacts the exact opposite way you'd expect. That's why it's called a paradox. I've also included concrete habits you can start changing right now, even if you know zero about nutrition or medicine. It's free, you can download it in a second, and it might be the single most useful thing you do for your health today. Just click the link in the description to head to the site, drop your email, and get the guide sent straight to you. Don't put this off.